Welcome, my name is Peter Geldmes. In this discussion video, we'll take a look at a very fascinating movement that's happening in the telecommunication environment. We're going to take a look at the difference between the open network philosophy and the controlled network philosophy, or in other words, the battle between the Netheads and the Bellheads. This presentation goes to the very core of the future of third generation and fourth generation networks. And once you understand the different philosophies in this specific model, you'll also understand where every single technology that we can expect in the next few years will fit in. But let's get to the presentation and see what the agenda will be. The very first item on the agenda are the various voice over IP and instant messaging applications that we have. Applications like Skype or Instant Messenger from Microsoft, and how these applications are changing the very nature and role of telecommunications throughout the world. The second part of the agenda is where we'll take a look at the digital value chain, and this specific model will assist us in understanding all the challenges that telecommunication companies will face in the near future. Point number 3 is the very heart of the presentation, and this is where we take a look at the Bellheads and the Netheads and why the different philosophies they have are creating the friction or the uncertainty in the telecommunication marketplace at this current time. We'll take a look at a couple of air interfaces, technology like HSDPA, WiMAX and Flash OFDM, and we'll see how we can classify them in this new classification framework that we've introduced you to. We'll also take a look at the technologies in the core network and how they will change in the near future and how this will have an impact on the business models of telecommunication companies in the future. We'll also take a look at the role of value-added services, should they be within the network or outside the network. And then finally, some strategic decisions that most companies or organizations will face in this very interesting world of convergence we're moving into. Well, let's get going with the presentation. And the very first item we're going to be looking at is voice over IP and instant messaging applications. Most of you by now have heard of the word Skype or voice over IP or even instant messaging. Companies like Google have launched Google Talk, and all of these applications are very interesting to utilize because we can simply download them on an intelligent PDA or a desktop, and we can make free telephone calls around the world. Let's take a look at one or two visual views of Skype or Instant Messenger. On the screen, you will see that a number of individuals is available at this point in time. I can talk to them because they're indicated in green, and the moment I click on any one of their names, that will allow me to communicate with this person irrelevant of where they are in the world. Another interesting thing is that no telephone numbers are allocated for the specific names that individuals use. You simply choose your own name, and the service that you subscribe to will tell you if that name is available or not. So you actually choose your own name as an identifier in this interconnected environment. What is very interesting is the key difference between the traditional approach of telephony and this new approach of telephony. The traditional approach gave you a dumb instrument, a telephone that you had to pick up, you dialed the number, and then the network had the intelligence to switch you to someone else. In this new environment, however, it's something else. Instead of having a dumb instrument and an intelligent network, we now have intelligent instruments, computers, PDAs, and this doesn't require an intelligent network anymore. It simply requires a dumb network or simply a pipe through which it can send all these packets of data. Because the switching is made on the device via present server sitting somewhere else on the internet, but my connection is purely a peer-to-peer connection without making use of any intelligence in the traditional telecommunication network. And this is the fundamental difference between the two. We won't see an abrupt change between it because most people will have a Skype connection and most of their friends might not have a connection. And this would mean that the traditional telephony environment will still play a significant role. That means that telephone numbers will be with us for a number of years, but will start disappearing in about 10 or 15 years from now. So the various voice over IP numbers will be utilized to actually connect to your name. And that will become the bridge between the old telephone system and the new telephone system. If you also want to call someone from a computer to a normal telephone line, you'll be able to dial it directly through the internet, where that interconnect will take place between the internet world and the old traditional telephone world. But this is what we'll expect in a few years' time. in early 2006, 2007, we anticipate a number of instant messaging applications and voice over IP applications becoming available on your desktop. And that simply means that you no longer need a telephone. By simply having an earpiece and a microphone, you can plug it straight into your computer and you can call anyone in the world either on this new environment via voice over IP or on their cellular phones or on their telephones, because this interconnect between the internet and the telephone world becomes easier with new technology enabling the integration between these two scenarios. So that's what we can expect in the voice over IP space in the next few years. Let's quickly take a look at one theoretical framework called the digital value chain to enable us to understand where all of these things are going to in the future. So the digital value chain looks as follows. If you take a look at the screen, we can start at the user's hardware, somewhere in the middle of the chain. And the user's hardware can be anything. It can either be a computer, it can be a handheld device, a mobile phone. So if we take a look at this mobile phone, for example, this is the hardware. And on top of it, there's an operating system. On this specific device, the Symbian operating system is dominant. There are other operating systems like Microsoft or even Linux-enabled phones. This operating system enables certain other browsers or applications to run on top of it. You will, for example, have the Microsoft Explorer browser or the Safari browser running on Nokia phones, and then certain applications running on top of this, Java-enabled applications or specific applications that is linked to that specific browser or operating system. So if you take a look again at the digital value chain, that explains the last part of the value chain, the user's hardware, the operating system, the browser, and the application that is actually running on top of this hardware. If we, however, take a look at the back end of the digital value chain, the local loop becomes significant. In this specific example, the local loop will either be a GSM or a third-generation network, enabling this device to communicate with the network. In your home environment, it can be a computer, that is the hardware, chatting via an ADSL line to the network itself. Or it can either be a PlayStation 3 or a X360 box, or even a multi-choice box with different communication channels connecting to the networks or to the content that they're providing. But in this specific grid, you will also see that in the telecommunications space, all the intelligence is built into the network. So we have an intelligent edge that gives you a number of value-added services. It identifies you so it can run the billing relationship. And then there's a core switching mechanism that connects the hardware to the internet or via the web to a certain portal. And once you're into a portal, you can then look at certain application or content. Let's quickly take a look at the last part. If you connect into the internet, once the telephone company have identified you and have established the billing relationship, you can then connect to a portal where you can take purchase music, for example, or take a look at free content, depending where you want to go to on the internet. The most important thing is that the portals allow you to have access to certain other applications that you can use in the business environment, or it gives you access to certain content like music, DVDs, videos, or any other multimedia application that you might be interested in. So the digital value chain gives us a very interesting focus of how everything fits together.